Your phone is talking to something right now. You never gave it permission to speak. Not a text message, not a call, something quieter. Something that never asks, never notifies, and never stops. While you scroll, while you sleep, while your screen sits black on a nightstand, a signal leaves your device, bounces off nearby networks, and reports back information about exactly where you are. You didn't turn this on. You probably don't even know it exists. And here's the part that should genuinely unsettle you. Turning off Wi-Fi and Bluetooth from your quick settings panel does almost nothing to stop it. Read that again. The switches you think control this behavior are, for the most part, decoration. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It isn't a rumor from an anonymous forum post. It's a documented, acknowledged, built-in layer of modern Android. And in 2026, it has only gotten more aggressive, more deeply embedded, and harder to fully escape. What you're about to learn touches 3 separate systems hiding inside your device, and each one does something different, something most people have never heard explained clearly. By the end of this, you're going to open your settings and see your phone differently. Let's start with the one that catches almost everyone off guard. Android has a feature that keeps your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth radios scanning for nearby signals, even after you've switched both of them off. Not metaphorically off. Actually off, according to the toggle. And yet, underneath that toggle, the hardware keeps listening. Google built this feature deliberately, and it has a real technical purpose. It feeds a system that estimates your location more precisely than GPS alone, especially indoors, in parking garages, in shopping malls, anywhere satellite signals struggle to reach. Your phone quietly detects nearby Wi-Fi access points and Bluetooth low-energy beacons, and even if you never connect to a single one of them, their presence alone is enough. Each router, each smart speaker, each stranger's fitness tracker becomes a landmark your phone uses to triangulate your position. Think about what that means. You're not just being located by satellites orbiting the planet. You're being located by every piece of nearby electronics that happens to be broadcasting a signal, whether it belongs to you or not. This is where most explanations stop. But here's where it gets worse. This feature isn't hidden behind some obscure developer menu that only engineers know about. It sits inside your location settings, buried 2 or 3 menus deep, worded in language most users skim past without a second thought. Wi-Fi scanning and Bluetooth scanning. Separate from the actual Wi-Fi and Bluetooth toggles, most people assume control everything. On many devices, it ships enabled by default. Nobody walks you through what it does when you first set up your phone. Nobody asks you to opt in. It's simply there, running, the moment you finish setup, long before you've made a single conscious privacy decision about your device. And this is where everything changes, because the story doesn't end with location accuracy. This same background scanning behavior is one of the quiet reasons your battery drains faster than it should, especially as your phone ages. Multiple independent investigations into Android battery drain in the past year have traced meaningful battery loss directly back to these 2 scanning settings running continuously in the background, invisible to the user, chewing through power to build a map of the world around you that you never asked for and rarely benefit from directly. Some users who disabled both settings reported their battery life nearly doubling. Not a small improvement, nearly doubling. That's not a rounding error. That's a signal that something significant has been running in the background this entire time, something powerful enough to have that big of an effect once removed. But the scanning system isn't a single feature. It's a layer, and underneath it sits a second one, nearby device scanning built on Bluetooth Low Energy technology, and this one operates almost independently of your actual Bluetooth switch. This is the feature responsible for those notifications you've probably seen. Your phone suddenly alerting you that a nearby speaker, earbud case, or unfamiliar device is available to connect. Convenient, on the surface. But convenience always has a cost. And the cost here is that your phone is constantly broadcasting its own presence and constantly listening for the presence of others, creating a 2-way exchange of signals with any Bluetooth Low Energy device close enough to hear it. According to Google's own explanations of the feature, this operates even when your Bluetooth toggle shows off, because BLE runs on a low power layer that doesn't fully shut down with a single switch. And what most people are not seeing is that this makes your phone perpetually discoverable, perpetually detectable to any receiver close enough and equipped to listen. Newer phones increasingly ship with this turned off by default, which tells you something important. Even Google recognizes this setting carries more risk than most users realize, or it wouldn't have quietly reversed the default in newer releases. Now, here's where the story escalates into something far more controversial, something that ignited real anger among Android users the moment it was discovered. In late 2024, and continuing to expand through 2025 and into this year, Google pushed a new system component onto more than 1 billion Android devices, silently, automatically, without an install prompt, without a notification, without asking a single user for permission. Its name is Android System Safety Core. If you've never heard of it, that's exactly the point. It was never announced by name. It arrived disguised inside a routine Google Play system update, the kind your phone installs automatically in the background while you sleep, the kind that never asks you to confirm anything. Think about what that means for a moment. A background service capable of analyzing content on your device arrived on your phone the same way a bug fix would, silently, invisibly, permanently, and most users only discovered it existed by accident, scrolling through their list of installed system apps and stumbling across an unfamiliar name they never approved. Search that name and you'll find waves of confused, frustrated, and frightened users on Reddit, on tech forums, on review pages, describing the same experience. They open settings. They see Android System Safety Core sitting there. They don't remember installing it. Nobody told them what it does. So what does it actually do? According to Google's own documentation, Safety Core provides on-device content classification, meaning it analyzes images locally, directly on your phone's hardware, to detect potentially sensitive material like nudity. Its first public use case is powering something called sensitive content warnings inside Google Messages, a feature designed to blur explicit images before you see them and warn you before you send one. On paper, that sounds protective, responsible even. But here's the tension nobody can resolve cleanly. The way this was delivered undermines the very trust the feature depends on. Google says the analysis happens entirely on the device, that no images are uploaded, that no identifiable data leaves your phone. And to be fair, independent researchers who've examined Safety Core's network behavior have largely confirmed that claim. It doesn't appear to transmit image content back to Google's servers, but confirming that the content stays local doesn't answer the deeper question that started this entire firestorm in the first place. If a system this capable, this quietly embedded, this deeply woven into the operating system itself, can be installed on more than 1 billion devices without a single explicit request for permission, what else could be delivered the exact same way, with the exact same silence, and would you even know? That's not paranoia. That's the actual argument privacy researchers have been making since the moment Safety Core surfaced. The technology itself may be relatively benign today, but the delivery mechanism, a background system component installed without consent, without notification, embedded at a level most users can't fully inspect or remove, is a precedent. And precedents don't stay small. Once a channel exists for silently pushing content analysis infrastructure onto 1 billion devices, that channel doesn't disappear after one feature. It becomes the new normal delivery method for whatever comes next. This is not chaos. This is architecture. Every piece of what we've just walked through, the Wi-Fi scanning that survives your toggle, the Bluetooth low-energy layer that keeps broadcasting your presence, the silent system component capable of classifying the content on your phone, none of these arrived by accident. Each was engineered, tested, and deployed deliberately, at scale, across an operating system that now runs on the overwhelming majority of smartphones on Earth. Android's global market share sits well above 70% of all mobile devices worldwide, according to the mobile analytics firms that track this continuously. That is not a niche operating system quietly experimenting with a few power users. That is the primary computing device for billions of people, and every one of the behaviors above ships by default, unless someone manually finds it and manually shuts it down. And here's what most people are not seeing, the part that never makes it into the surface-level explanations. These systems don't operate in isolation from each other. Your location, refined by Wi-Fi and Bluetooth signal scanning, combines with your proximity to other devices, refined by nearby device scanning. And layered underneath both of those sites a content classification engine capable of analyzing what's actually inside the media flowing through your phone. Individually, each piece has a reasonable, even beneficial explanation. Location accuracy helps navigation. Nearby device detection helps you pair headphones faster. Content classification protects people, especially minors, from unwanted explicit images, but stacked together they represent a phone that watches where you are, watches what's near you, and increasingly holds the technical capability to look at what you're looking at. All running quietly, all defaulting to on, all requiring the user to go digging through nested settings menus most people never open in their entire ownership of the device. Now think about who this affects most. It isn't the tech-savvy user who reads privacy blogs and audits their permissions every month. Those users find this eventually. The people most exposed are the ones who never open a settings menu beyond changing their wallpaper, which statistically is most smartphone owners on the planet. They are the ones whose battery quietly drains faster without explanation. They are the ones whose location gets refined by strangers' routers without ever knowing it's happening. They are the ones who discover an app called Safety Core sitting on their phone with no memory of installing it and no clear answer for why it's there. But here's where the story shifts again, because this isn't purely a story about Google acting unilaterally into a vacuum. This is happening inside a much larger, much more contested global conversation about who gets to control what happens inside the device in your pocket. Governments across Europe have spent the past several years pushing regulatory frameworks that increasingly demand transparency and explicit consent for exactly this kind of background data processing. The scrutiny facing SafetyCore in particular has already drawn direct comparisons to earlier, far more controversial proposals, including an abandoned Apple plan from several years ago that also promised on-device, privacy-preserving content scanning, and which collapsed under intense public backlash over fears it could evolve into a broader surveillance infrastructure. The same fear is resurfacing now, aimed at Google, and it isn't going away quietly. According to informed technology analysts tracking this space, the tension boils down to a single, unresolved question that neither Google nor any regulator has fully answered. Where is the line between a phone that protects you and a phone that monitors you, when both run on the exact same underlying technology, delivered through the exact same silent channel? Today, SafetyCore's stated purpose is narrow: nudity detection inside Google Messages, invoked only when a supported app specifically requests it. But the infrastructure behind it is general purpose by design. It's built as a toolkit other apps can plug into for broader content classification, not a single-use tool locked to one feature. That means the current scope is a policy decision, not a technical limitation. And policy decisions, unlike technical limitations, can change with a single update, the same kind of silent, unannounced update that put SafetyCore on your phone in the first place. This is where the escalation reaches its sharpest point. Because if the delivery method never requires your consent, then every future expansion of what this infrastructure scans, classifies, or flags also never requires your consent. You are, in effect, trusting a system you cannot fully see, controlled by a company whose only public commitment is that today's version stays limited to nudity detection and stays local to your device. That may well be true right now, but right now is doing a lot of work in that sentence, and every privacy researcher who's studied this history knows it. So what can you actually do about any of this? This is where the fog clears, because unlike a lot of the vague alarmism floating around online titles designed purely to scare you, the fixes here are concrete, and they're inside your phone right now, waiting to be found. Start with the scanning settings, because they're the easiest and most immediately impactful. Open your Settings app, go to Location, and look for Location Services, sometimes labeled Advanced or Location Services, depending on your device manufacturer. Inside that menu, you'll find Wi-Fi scanning and Bluetooth scanning listed as separate toggles from your actual Wi-Fi and Bluetooth switches. Turn both of them off. This single action stops your phone from continuously broadcasting and listening for nearby signals purely to build a location map. And for many users, this is the exact change responsible for the dramatic battery life improvements reported across the past year. Next, address nearby device scanning directly. Depending on your phone's manufacturer, this typically lives under Settings, then Google, then Device Connections, then Nearby Share, where you'll find a device visibility option. Setting this to hidden stops your phone from constantly announcing itself to every Bluetooth low-energy receiver within range. If you rarely use Nearby Share to transfer files between devices, there's very little reason to leave this broadcasting your presence around the clock. Now, SafetyCore. This one requires slightly more effort because Google didn't design it with an obvious front-facing off switch. Go into Settings, then Apps, and make sure Show System Apps is enabled, since SafetyCore hides among your system processes by default and won't appear in a standard app list. Search for Android System SafetyCore. On most devices, tapping into it gives you the option to uninstall. On others, particularly where it's treated as a baked-in system component, you'll only see Disable. Either action effectively stops it from running and scanning anything further. Disabling is generally the safer route if you're worried about breaking other features that may eventually depend on SafetyCore's infrastructure, since Google has hinted at expanding its use toward things like scam and spam detection down the line. But here's the catch nobody tells you up front, and it's worth sitting with. SafetyCore can silently reappear after a future system update or Google Play Services refresh. Because Google treats it as a first-party system component rather than a normal app, updates can quietly reinstall it exactly the way it arrived the first time, without a notification, without asking. That means disabling it once isn't a permanent fix. It's a fix you may need to repeat, checking back after every major update to confirm it hasn't quietly returned. Think about what that says about the actual balance of control here. You can shut the door, but you don't hold the only key. And this is precisely why the story doesn't end with 3 simple settings changes. This is bigger than battery life, bigger than one blurred image feature in a messaging app. What we're really looking at is the blueprint for how a modern operating system, running on the majority of phones on the planet, has learned to deploy increasingly capable background infrastructure without needing your permission at any point in the process. Not at install, not at first activation, not at expansion. Today it's location accuracy and nudity detection. Tomorrow, according to Google's own hints about expanding Safety Core's use cases, it could be spam detection, scam detection, or some other form of automated content analysis none of us have been told about yet, arriving the exact same way everything above arrived, quietly through a routine update with no headline, no prompt, and no opt-in. The real story here was never really about a single hidden scanner. It's about the growing gap between what your phone is capable of doing in the background and what you, the person holding it, actually know is happening. Every year that gap widens slightly. Every year another layer gets added: location refinement, proximity broadcasting, on-device content classification. Each justified individually, each reasonable in isolation, each delivered without asking. And every year, fewer users know enough to go looking for the settings that give even a fraction of that control back. So ask yourself the question. This entire investigation keeps circling back to the one nobody at Google has answered directly, and no regulator has forced them to answer either. If this is what your phone is already doing quietly today, fully disclosed, only in documentation most people will never read, what does it look like 5 updates from now? What new capability slides into that same silent channel next, dressed in the same reassuring language about safety and protection? You just found out about 3 systems running behind your screen without your knowledge. The uncomfortable truth is that you have no way of confirming these are the only 3. And until Android changes how it delivers this kind of infrastructure, until consent becomes the default instead of the exception, the only real defense any of us have is doing exactly what you just did, looking closer, asking what else is hiding in that settings menu. Because the next hidden feature won't announce itself either. It never does.